Some 2 or 3 told us they couldn't speak English at all, and they just didn't fit in with the local terrain or the local people. They were standouts.
The men meeting here at Appalachian in 1957 were in fact the leaders of the Mafia in America. They were rounded up and interrogated, a humiliation for the warlords of organized crime.
14-carat hoodlums, strictly lived by breaking the law, preying on honest people, taking over businesses, killing each other, killing other people that got in their way.
Croswell's discovery shocked even the experts in organized crime. At the time, most police forces in America claimed the Mafia did not exist.
Appalachian was a bombshell. That's, I think, all these 25 years later, it's fair to describe it as such. This meeting of over probably the full extent was about 80-some-odd people, meeting all from different parts of the country, all recognized as members of organized crime, many of them documented in the files of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics as members of the organization, all meeting at one place on a chilly, unpleasant afternoon in Appalachian, New York, a remote town in the southwestern part of New York State, was a phenomenon that could not be explained. It certainly said more than anything that some form of organization exists.
6 years later, there was another bombshell. The first man from within the Mafia to turn public informer appeared at Senate hearings and on nationwide television.
The committee will come to order. We have as our first witness today Joseph Valachi, who is...
In jail for narcotics, Joseph Valachi was breaking the Mafia's most feared commandment, omerta, silence. He was the first ever to reveal the structure of the Mafia and the men who ran it.
You do solemnly swear that the evidence you shall give before this Senate subcommittee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Go ahead, do that.
Valachi also revealed its secret Italian name.
Are you a member of any secret organization?
Yes, I am.
What is the name of it?
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Our thing and our family in English.
Valachi called it Cosa Nostra rather than Mafia. Helped by huge charts, he named hundreds of men in the crime families or crime armies that made up the organization. He knew the punishment for betraying their secrets.
Yes. Senator, can I say something, Senator?
Yes.
As to what I'm telling you now, I need to go no further to say nothing else. This is what I'm telling you, what I'm exposing to you and the press and everybody. This is my doing.
Valachi died of cancer in prison, but he had armed guards to the end. Every informer faces a death sentence from the Mafia. Jimmy Fratiano is the most important Mafia member ever to defect. He now has to be protected from the hitmen of the mob.
I just take my chances, try to stay away from them, go someplace where they can't find me, just live as long as I can. You know, when they find you, bye-bye, baby.
Jerry DeNono, another killer turned informer. He's now serving time for murder in the same prison as men who want to kill him for betraying the Mafia. He rejects his old mob connections.
I don't like what they've done because they haven't realized reality yet. They're still in a fantasy. So I stay away from them, but there's only so much of a piece of a room I can hide. That's why it's not that easy to do time.
Joey Cantalupo. For 14 years, he worked closely with the bosses of 4 crime families. He became an informer for the FBI, and his evidence sent many top mobsters to jail. He now lives in hiding.
You must realize that a man like me, who has made cases against organized crime figures, could not possibly stay on the streets of New York. It was just a matter of time before I would be killed by these people.
Killing is the mafia's way with informers. Bill Romer remembers how the mob took revenge on a debt collector they thought had betrayed them.
William Action Jackson had been a juice collector for the mob, and they thought he had become an FBI informant, which he had not. But they thought he had, and so what they did, in order to try to get him to admit that he had been an FBI informant, they took him, they abducted him physically, and they took him to a meat plant, a meat factory where they hung meat, and they put him up on a meat hook through his rectum. They hung him on this meat hook, 300 pounds Jackson weighed. They hung him on this meat hook. They tied him up so that he couldn't wiggle his way off, and then they got a cattle prod, and they electrified that cattle prod, and they stuck it in his penis, and they left him there, trying, in the meantime, interrogated him concerning his relationship with the FBI, which was non-existent, and they tortured him for 3 days. Never did really kill him, but he naturally expired through the excruciating pain.
What is this organization that kills to guard its secrets? There are 25 crime families across America, each structured like an army. The head of each family is called the boss. His deputy is the underboss. Equal with the underboss is the consigliere, the boss's top advisor. Beneath the underboss are capo regimes, lieutenants or captains who each command their own crew of soldiers. These men have all been initiated into the family and are known as made members, made men. To be made a member of this secret society, you have to be Italian, by birth or descent. Aladino Fratiano, alias Jimmy the Weasel, born Naples, Italy, 1913. He was chosen for membership of the Los Angeles crime family, and with 4 other candidates, he went through the traditional secret rite.
5 of us went to a winery on Western Avenue in Los Angeles, and they took me in first. They take you in one at a time, and there was like 40, 50 members of the family there, and the boss would be in the front end with the underboss, the consigliere, and the capos, all on one side, and around the table there was the soldiers. Well, in the middle of the table they had a gun and a sword cross one another. So they bring you in there, and so you hold hands, everybody stands up, and you tie each other's hands. And then the boss says something in Italian that lasts maybe a couple minutes. And after that, they prick your finger with the sword, draw blood. Then they take you around to each member of the family. You kiss them on the cheek, you introduce you, and you're a made member of La Cosa Nostra.
The boss of the families decide who is going to be made as to how they have produced in the past years. They don't make people every year. They make people maybe every 5 years, every 10 years. They open the books. They have these tremendous books. They're going to open the books, and we're going to make 15 people, new members of this organization, because 5 of our members have passed away, and we need to replenish with new blood. So the bosses decide as to who is going to be made, as to what they have done in the past years, as to how they produce for the organization.
And they say if I introduce you to somebody, and I say he's a friend of ours, that means he was a member of the family. But if I introduce you to somebody and I say he's a friend of mine, that don't mean nothing. You see, friend of ours means our thing. See, that's La Cosa Nostra. That's in Italian, is our thing.
Years ago, they used to make members of organized crime families because of the way they conduct themselves, meaning, you, my friend, go out and you kill Joe Schmo. And you kill Boo Baby. You know, they got all these crazy names. And after you do that, we'll recognize you as being a good fellow. We'll make you a member of our family. They don't do that anymore today. It's more sophisticated. You go out and show me $1 million profit on a certain interest, a certain business deal. And you show us $1 million profit, and we'll make you a good fella. We'll make you a member of our organized crime family.
They don't grab me off the street and say, because I shot John Doe in the head twice and did a great job, I now make you a made man, which gives you privilege to a piece of all this action. That's baloney. The soldiers that are in Chicago that are not made are soldiers, associate members, that have to go do burglaries, go do robberies, go rob banks and do extortion and everything else to make a living. Now, they don't get a piece of the pie of this mafia enterprise. The only ones that do that are made are ones that have contributed $500,000, $200,000, whatever you've contributed to this pot, you then take out, and you got a piece of the action. Now you're made.
When you're a made member of a family, it demands respect. People under you and people in the street. Once a person is made, the whole world knows he's made. Because it's important to have that statue that, well, now you're made. Now, I demand respect. And you have to give me respect because they know the consequences. You don't fool around with made men.
What are we talking about? We're talking about maybe 4,000 people of Italian descent across the United States that are the hierarchy of organized crime. In that group that are servicing these established organized crime members is every ethnic group. You know, you have the Jews, the Irish, the Hispanics, the blacks. They're all involved in in some form of criminal activity. But the established, the organized crime group happens to be the Italians.
The detective squad for the borough of Queens, New York City, preparing for an undercover operation against the mafia. The crime bosses summit at Appalachian in 1957 revealed how little law enforcement knew about organized crime. Since then, police forces have penetrated the families by using not just informers, but also bugs, telephone wiretaps, and microphones.
And ask him what happened. Yeah, and ask him what happened to that on that on that shooting the other day in the same area. He probably has knowledge of that. You know.
All right. I'll get up to talk as much as I can.
And you know what the signals are in case you have a problem, right?
Right.
All right. Peggy, I'm going to have Peggy and John in there, and they're going to be in the next about 2 booths away from you.
Okay.
They're going to go in there ahead of you, so it don't look too suspicious. It says, then I'm going to have Teddy and Vinny on the outside. You're going to be, Jack, going to have that Kel going, okay?
Yes, I'll be recording everything from the outside.
Right. Make sure
The police know that for every member of a crime family who dies or goes to jail, there is always someone ready to replace him. Only the mafia has this tradition of rebirth and renewal.
There were people that I knew when I got started over 20 years ago that were just sons of organized crime members and really not involved. But as in the last 25 years, now these people are capos. They have a crew of their own, and they've made their bones, so to speak, and pay their dues, and now they're, if they have the ability, they're ruling 10 or 15 people that are out there making money for them.
August 14th at 13:25 hours. This is the subject with the sunglasses with a close-up.
At street level, even a soldier can earn millions of dollars for himself and his crime family. This police undercover film reveals organized crime making money from gambling, bets on the horses and sporting contests, and on numbers, a kind of daily lottery.
Subject has handed this subject some money. They look to be very large bills.
Money made from gambling on streets all over America helps finance other businesses, such as narcotics.
13:45 hours. This male on the left has a plastic bag in the back of his hand behind his shirt.
The bag in this man's hand contains ½ pound of heroin, just part of a deal worth $100 million.
The white shirt just threw the bag into the automobile.
Made men, mafiosi, usually claim they don't deal in drugs. The truth is they have been in the business ever since the mafia came to America. Although the marketplace appears tranquil, it is governed by violence. Not surprising when millions of dollars are at stake. One of the mafia's most lucrative businesses is loan sharking or shylocking, lending money at extortionate rates of interest that can turn small loans into huge debts. The mafia moneylenders know that violence or the threat of violence will make the customer pay up in the end.
Hello? Mike? Yeah? Is that motherfucker there? Yeah. Let me talk to him. Yeah, Jimmy? Yeah, Chuck. Yeah, it's Chucky, Jim. I've been here all weekend. All right, I got tied up here. Chuck, I'm going to tell you something. Here, Jim. You have that fucking 200 in my hands tomorrow. If you ain't got the 200 in my fucking hands tomorrow, you understand me? You better stay there, because I'll tell you, you've reached the end of the line with me, my friend. You have no more time, and no more bullshit, and no more outs. By tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, you have that 200 in this joint. Believe me, kid. And every Friday from here on in, you have what you're supposed to have in this joint. If we don't see you tomorrow by 6 o'clock, you don't owe nobody nothing. You understand? You have it here by 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Or believe me when I tell you, and I promise you this. Believe me, I promise you. I'll break every fucking bone in your body before I go to jail. Every fucking bone in your body. I swear to my kids. You understand? All right, okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Such is the money these men earned from their street rackets that they were able to offer the police $200,000 to destroy these videotapes. They were unsuccessful and went to jail. Joey Cantalupo worked with such men.
Shorty Spiro was a recently made member. In 1975, he became a made member of the Colombo family, and he lived by violence. He was a violent individual. And there was nothing nice about Shorty Spiro, and I had a situation with him at one time where I was in a sociable game of four-handed pinochle partners, and I caught Shorty cheating. And we were at this Michael Bellino's house, who was also a member of the same Colombo family, and I said, Shorty, you can't do that because you're cheating. And our wives are in the same area of this particular house. He says, what? I said, you're cheating, Shorty. You can't cheat. This is a sociable game. And he takes a .45 out of his pocket and he puts it to my head. He says, don't you ever call me a fucking cheater. I'll blow your brains out. At that time, I got a little diarrhea, and I said to my wife, come on, let's get out of here. And we left. But the man, actually, he lived that way, and he died that way. His brother was shot to death, and he tried to revenge his brother's death, and he was killed himself. So there's no more Shorty Spiros.
I was present at a 10-cent and 20-cent limit poker game where he became so annoyed and upset at the comments being passed by Jimmy the Brush, and that was his nickname. His last name was Fife. He wasn't Italian. That he grabbed his head, pulled him forward, and bit off his earlobe. Bit it off and spit it out. And then took the guy into his car and drove him down to Paul Kimball Emergency Hospital. And then about 5 minutes later, they come rushing back to look for that piece, that earlobe, so that they could sew it back on. That was Nicky Valvano, Nicky Boy. He was the same guy who got a message once that his wife wants to see him. He hadn't been home for several weeks. He had girlfriends all over the place. And so he asked me if I would drive him out to his house, and I did. And we walk into the house. His wife's name was Dorothy. He says, what's the matter, Dorothy? She said, you got to do something about Jojo. Jojo was his son, about 11 years old. What's the matter with Jojo? He's acting up. I was called to school. They want to throw him out. He's unmanageable. You got to do something about him. So where is he now? He's out in the back. Hey, Jojo, come here. And I'm trying to mimic his voice with the Italian clip, you know. And Jojo walks in and he says, yeah? Hey, what's the matter with you? Why can't you be good in school? What are you acting up like that? Don't you like school? He says, no, I don't. He says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the kid says, I want to be a thief, just like you. He says, then pay attention to me. Now, I witnessed this, and I listened to this, and I'm thinking of my pure kids back home. What am I in with here? I'm ordered to work with this paranoid bastard.
I mean, he was your master, wasn't he?
No, no. I was ordered to work with him. He was not my boss. But if you knew him, you didn't cross him. Or you didn't argue with him. I'm proud of my earlobes, and I still have them.
90% of the made members of organized crime families have girlfriends. They hold their wives on what we say is a pedestal. Nothing bad happens to their wives. Their girlfriends, they take all over the world. They introduce them to everybody. They enjoy them. They spend their money on them. And eventually they go home to the nice wife who's home baby feeding the babies because they all have a tremendous amount of children. So they keep their wives what we call pregnant and barefooted. And they enjoy their lives with their girlfriends. But they go through girlfriends like they go through veal cutlets. It's big, just turns over. And eventually they give you hand-me-downs. Like this is, I'm Ali Boy Persico, and I'm going out with Dutza. It's a girl. Right? But I used her for about a year or two now. Now, Michael Bellino, you can have Dutza. I don't want her no more. I got something new.
I'll never forget this one time, Joe came over to me and he said, come on, Ali with you. I was having linguine and clam sauce. I'll never forget it. He said, have a glass of wine. Nancy came over to me, who was Mio's sister. And she said, listen, Jerry, do me a favor. Take me to Cicero tonight. After you finish eating, can you give me a ride to Cicero? She left the table, and Joe said to me, you don't drive her nowhere. You don't talk to her no more. You stay away from her. I said, I ain't doing nothing. I ain't fooling around with her. He says, no, I'm not saying you're fooling around with her. Don't go near her. I says, why? He says, that's Milwaukee Phil's girlfriend. He was in a federal penitentiary doing time. But that was still his girlfriend, even though he was married. Now, he's married, got kids, but that's his girlfriend, and you ain't supposed to talk to his girlfriend. I laughed. I said, okay. Months later, she was dating, this guy's name is Blackie. He was a bookmaker in Cicero. And Nan went to ask Milwaukee Phil for permission to get married to Blackie. And he's married now. You get this? He's in prison. He gives his permission to her to marry this other guy, this other mustache. All right? He dies. He dies in prison. Joe tells me, he says, see Blackie over there? He's dead. I said, what for? Milwaukee Phil's dead. He died in prison. And that's only his girlfriend, Joe. What the hell's the difference? He said, from his grave, he ordered the hit. 3 weeks later, after they were married, Blackie was shot right in front of Nan in a rocking chair at their house. From the grave, he ordered that hit.
What did all that mean?
Just told me, don't be fooling around with nobody else's girlfriend, that's all. It just showed me that this man had so much power, so much control over people, that out of respect, they killed this guy because of Blackie dating Milwaukee Phil's girlfriend, which don't make any sense to me, But I'm just saying, this is their mind, just to go show you how their mind thinks.
In every situation, whether it's government or organized crime, there are commandments. And there are commandments in religion and things like that, but you do not break these commandments. And one of the commandments in organized crime is that you do not fool around with another man's wife, a member of organized crime's wife, or a member, or his girlfriend's. This is a no-no. You do not do that. Like, I could be very secure in knowing that I got this gorgeous girlfriend of mine, and I take her out to different restaurants, that nobody would try even move in on my territory, because she belongs to me. And this is a law. You do not break this law. But when you do, the penalty could be death. I say could be. And a perfect situation of that is Joe Colombo's father was fooling around with a member of organized crime's girlfriend or wife, pursue whatever it might be. And they caught them in a car together. And the next day, when the cops found them, they were dead. They were both shot in the head. Dead. But the unfortunate thing here is that they cut off his prick and stuck it in his own mouth. And that's how they found him. And that's for fooling around with a wise guy's wife or girlfriend. The family is basically based on violence. And we are not talking about the normal everyday beating or a slap in the face. We're talking about murders to show that I am still the boss and you are not going to try and override me. And that is proven in many cases. There have been many cases where people have been murdered just for the sake of showing that I'm still the boss of this family and it's going to be run my way. And a perfect instance of that is an individual who was a captain in the Colombo family. His name was Mimi. He had control of Coney Island, which is a vast area. Coney Island is a big area, a large population. And he had all the numbers and the shylocking and everything, but he still answered to the boss. But Mimi had a terrible problem. He liked to drink. And when he drank, he didn't care who the fuck you were. You could have been Carl Gambino. And if you walked into the restaurant where he was at and he didn't like the way you looked, he says, hey, you look like a jerk, Carl. But he was drunk. The liquor was talking for him. And this was a situation that actually happened. In a restaurant in Coney Island, Carl walked into. And who's there falling on his face? But Mimi. Now, Mimi has his own crew, 20, 30 men who work for him. And because he insulted Carl, it was decided that this man has no respect. Respect is a big thing. And he had to eventually die. So Charlie Moose Panarella, who was also a captain in the Colombo family, got the contract to kill Mimi. And Mimi was killed. Now, his crew, these people who worked for him, cherished the guy. They loved the guy. He supported them. You know, everybody made money with him. And one night, there was these two members of the Colombo family also, but of Mimi's crew, are sitting in a bar called the 1717, which is on 86th Street in Brooklyn. And they're talking, oh, geez, you know, it wasn't right what they did to Mimi. We're going to have to get our guys together and take a stand or do something to Charlie Moose, because everybody knew Charlie Moose killed Mimi. So as they're talking about it, the bartender overhears it. He just goes in the back, he drops a dime, right? Tells whoever's on the other end what's going on. Tommy Babushka and his friend go out to the car across the street, and they get in the car. And the next thing you know, 2 shotgun blasts from a shotgun, and they are dead. So this shows you the control that they have over their own people.
It's business. Strictly, the murder I was involved with, one murder that I was involved with. The judge, I talked to him from where I was, and he said, that man is your problem. He murdered a client of ours, who we did not want nothing to happen to, including me. Not a thing we didn't want, not a hair touched. This kid was on heroin. He went crazy. He committed the crime. He couldn't be trusted no more. He couldn't be controlled no more. He was my responsibility. He was in my crew. That was business. As far as me be able to go to a 7-Eleven store and say, stick him up, I'd be scared to death. Just to rob it, I'd be scared to death. I wouldn't know how to do it. For me to hurt, say, a person like yourself for no reason, just for no reason, I wouldn't know how to do it. I couldn't do it. But business is business. And that was business, my responsibility. He broke our law. He broke our law. So we don't have courts. We got a court, but he wasn't at the court. He got tried, convicted, and executed. Because that was our own little family. And that's exactly how that was taken care of. But it was strictly business. It was in a remote area. Nobody else was jeopardized. No children were jeopardized. No family was jeopardized. Nobody else was jeopardized. In a remote area, take care of business, very clean, neat, end the story, goodbye. That's it.
I said, Louis, come on, we'll have a cup of coffee, you know. He's got the money. So as he went in, One guy put his armor on him. Frank Bump and I put the rope on him, and we killed him. That was it. We choked him. There was about 9 people there.
Why were they there?
Well, I don't know. They were there, you know how they meet or something like that, and they heard that I was coming in with Russian Louis, so they stayed. They were all members of our family, see. So they just stayed. They didn't have to be there. You know, it was just something that they happened to be there, and they just waited around, see.
See, most people would prefer not to be around when they see someone being strangled.
Well, not people in the family. They're killers themselves, you know. So it didn't mean nothing.
Kind of like a cabaret.
Yeah, just like a little performance, see? Like a magician. Something disappears, then it comes back.
And in this case, nobody comes back.
No, they don't come back, yeah. Yeah.
The honor amongst the organized crime in the Italian families is tremendous. There is so much honor there that it's not like these fly-by-night organizations or there are other aspects of organized crime other than the Italian organized crime. But the Italian have the honor. The other people don't have any honor. For instance, an individual named Matty the Horse Zorella beat somebody out of money in a deal, and they put a contract out on him. The man was sitting in the car with him and his wife and his 2 kids. They did not shoot the wife or the children. They went up to the car and shot him 3 times in the head. This is honor. If you get another organization like the Blacks or the JDL, whoever it might be, they blow up the whole car with everybody in it.
What did you feel about killing people? I mean, did...
I don't know. It's hard for me to explain. I didn't have much feeling. Because, I never killed nobody that was innocent. They were all gangsters. They're killers themselves. People that I fooled with, guys that I fooled with were killers themselves.
These are the men who lead the crime families of America. Tony Accardo and Joey Aiuppa, joint bosses of Chicago. Joe Bonanno, founder boss of one of the New York families, and Carlos Marcello, boss of New Orleans. They like to portray themselves as respectable businessmen.
These men could walk amongst you and you would never know who they were if you did not know them as the individuals that they were. But their reputations were far greater because of all the years of organizing their families, the tragic things that they have done to people, and the people feared them. So they demand respect. Even though they don't go out today and kill people, they would have somebody do it. But during the early years, you can believe that they've murdered people and cut them up and threw them to the fish and all that stuff. You could run into Carlo Gambino on the street when he was around and never know. He would fit in with anybody. You would never know this poor, meek, humble man was the boss of bosses and the boss of one of the biggest crime families in New York, or the biggest crime family. They might call him the old man because he was getting on in years, but he definitely dominated all the families. Nobody could get away with anything. Which means if somebody tried to come in and take over some of his territory, they could never do it because of his powerful, big. It's unbelievable the size of his family and the power the man had accumulated during the years, not only on the streets, but with politicians and cops and all kinds of people that he had literally corrupted.
Joey Cantalupo gave evidence against another New York crime boss, Funzi Thierry.
Funzi Thierry was the boss of the Genovese family. Now, this individual here is a meek and humble man. He is nothing to look at. He, I wouldn't say was more than 5'9" and weighed 140 pounds. A nothing man. I was partners with him in a business enterprise. And in my business enterprise was a made member, a captain in the Genovese family who Funzi was the boss of. His name was Louis LaRocca. Now, Louis LaRocca is a monster of a man. He is a monster. He demands respect also because of his fine position in the Genovese family. He has his own crew. He answers only to Funzi Thierry. Now, in one situation, Louis LaRocca is 6'2", 280 pounds. He's a monster of a man. And there was a situation where we were behind in our rent in the flea market. And I ran into Funzi, and Funzi asked me, how are you doing in the flea market? And I said, well, Funzi, we're behind on the rent. Now, here's this little meek man saying to me, you tell that motherfucking Louis to go and get the money or I'm going to cut his balls off. This little nothing here. Telling this guy. And I go back to the flea market, and Louis says, did you see the old man? I says, yeah. He said, what did he say? Did you tell him we're behind on the rent? I was embarrassed to tell Louis what he said. He says, tell me what he said. And I tell Louis, the old man says, go get the money or he's going to cut your balls off. The guy must have got a diarrhea in his pants when I told him that. He was so scared that he ran out and got the $5,000. Now, does that show you the respect or the fear that they have for this man right here? And it's not only Louis LaRocca. It's everybody in the family.
Angelo Bruno, the Philadelphia boss for more than 20 years, in his own home movies, never before shown outside his family's circle. Born in Sicily in 1910, Bruno fulfilled the American dream. He started with a grocery store and ended up a millionaire. In his private life, he was devoted to his wife and family. He prided himself on being a patriotic American. Bruno always looked more like a grandfather than a godfather. The image of a happy family man helped to further Bruno's reputation as the Gentle Don, a title he earned in 1959 when he refused to kill a rival who was plotting to kill him. South Philadelphia was Angelo Bruno's home territory. Most people in this Italian neighborhood have no connection with organized crime, but this is where most members of the Philadelphia crime family were reared. Mike Chitwood also grew up here and knows all the city's mobsters, but he joined the Philadelphia police and became its most decorated cop.
You can't find anybody to say a bad word about him in the neighborhoods. Angelo Bruno, you could never find anybody to say a bad word about him. Because they always were, quote, nice to the people. Somebody needed help, they couldn't pay their gas bill, electric bill, whatever, these guys would pick up the tab for them. And Bruno was always gentle, non-violent in his approach to whatever he did. And on March the 21st, 1980, as he pulled up to his house, it was about 9:50 p.m., and the assailant, in all probability, was hidden behind the truck. And as the power window was operated by the driver of the automobile, John Stanfa, the assailant stepped from behind the parked automobile, put a shotgun, probably a sawed-off shotgun, to the back of his right ear, and blew Bruno away.
The shooting was gangland style. Angelo Bruno was shot once in the back of the head at point-blank range. It was a sudden death that left the reputed mob boss frozen, his mouth open as if to call for help, but no one would hear him.
The horror of Angelo Bruno's murder outside his own home is remembered by his daughter Jean.
My father was left in that car for hours, and people kept coming and coming. Finally, the people in the street started shouting, "Take him away, take him away." And they took him away. And I didn't show any emotion, because if I did, maybe some people were glad that he was dead. Evidently some people were, or they wouldn't have killed him.
Who do you think killed your father?
I can't say, because I'm not positive.
Do you think it was people within your community, or do you think it was You presumably don't think it was the police, do you?
My father got to be too good for his own good. A new time was coming. A new time was coming. People were into drugs. People were turned on by rock stars and things like that. The time was coming, and my father was against it when there was a need for drugs, unfortunately. And my father was against this. And a lot of people wanted to make money, most likely. And they were dissatisfied because my father stuck to his beliefs. He didn't even like people around him who drank too much or gambled, things like that. And people misunderstood. And I think, naturally, some people, most of them are probably dead now. Some people wanted him out. Not out, I can't say out because that assumes that he was into something. But people who came to him for advice would always get turned down if it came to drugs. If somebody said, I'm sure, I'd like to go into this, I'm sure my father would say no.
The newspapers called him the godfather of Philadelphia, but to his neighbors, he was a good citizen.
He was a peaceful man. He wasn't a violent man. How about you, ma'am?
Wonderful person. He couldn't be any better.
We all play numbers. We all go to the racetrack. You know what I mean? We all cheat a little bit. But this man didn't play narcotics, and that's why he's dead today.
Perhaps Bruno was killed because he opposed drugs. Perhaps younger men simply wanted to take over. Those who ordered his killing probably attended his funeral. The era of the gentle Don was over.
Do you think the violence will ever go away, the violence associated with this kind of business, the mafia?
I would hope so, but that's a hard thing to answer because I don't know that much about it. I would hope that it would go away. It's a sad thing, but I can't say. I certainly hope so. If there's a mafia, should I say? I don't want to be quoted as an authority on anything. I'm just, you know, if I were anybody else giving my opinion, I probably wouldn't have to worry about a story or anything like that. There was a lot of pain after he died that you felt sorry for him and you suffered it because you loved him so much, the whole family, but I wouldn't have traded him for the world.
This was the beginning of what is referred to as the mob war in Philadelphia. Since that date, at least 18 people with organized crime connections have been killed. And people now see that these gentle, nice guy number writers are not as nice and as gentle as everybody thought. They're vicious, they're animals, they'll kill at the drop of a dime.
Police say a killer posing as a flower delivery man knocked on the door of John McCullough's home about 6:30 tonight. He brought in one package of poinsettias. When he returned, he had a gun, and police say he opened fire. The 60-year-old union leader lay on the kitchen floor. Police tried to calm his wife, Audrey, who was standing just a few feet away when her husband was shot. Police sources say tonight's murder of McCullough was an organized crime hit, just as carefully planned as the murder of Angelo Bruno last March.
In organized crime, if you're a killer or you're an extortionist or you're a big dope guy, you give respect that maybe you couldn't get as a fellow who worked in a factory or somebody who drove a car, a cab, or drove a bus.
Philip Chicken Man Testa, the alleged boss of Philadelphia's underworld, died when a bomb, possibly set off by remote control, exploded in the doorway of his South Philadelphia home. Police are calling it a mob assassination. The explosion was so powerful it shattered dozens of windows and was heard by police cars nearly 2 miles away.
I've seen people that I went to school with who were the quietest, mildest, most intelligent people that you would go to school with, and 20 years later you see them now, they're involved in some type of organized crime, whether they're involved in bookmaking, loan sharking. They live fast, they live big, they drive big cars, always have a lot of money in their pocket. And it's part of that mentality that allows organized crime to exist.
Police responding
from different parts of the country, all recognized as members of organized crime, many of them documented in the files of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics as members of the organization, all meeting at one place on a chilly, unpleasant afternoon in Appalachian, New York, a remote town in the southwestern part of New York State, was a phenomenon that could not be explained. It certainly said more than anything that some form of organization exists.
6 years later, there was another bombshell. The first man from within the Mafia to turn public informer appeared at Senate hearings and on nationwide television.
The committee will come to order. We have as our first witness today Joseph Valachi, who is...
In jail for narcotics, Joseph Valachi was breaking the Mafia's most feared commandment, omerta, silence. He was the first ever to reveal the structure of the Mafia and the men who ran it.
You do solemnly swear that the evidence you shall give before this Senate subcommittee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
William Action Jackson had been a juice collector for the mob, and they thought he had become an FBI informant, which he had not. But they thought he had, and so what they did, in order to try to get him to admit that he had been an FBI informant, they took him, they abducted him physically, and they took him to a meat plant, a meat factory where they hung meat, and they put him up on a meat hook through his rectum. They hung him on this meat hook, 300 pounds Jackson weighed. They hung him on this meat hook. They tied him up so that he couldn't wiggle his way off, and then they got a cattle prod, and they electrified that cattle prod, and they stuck it in his penis, and they left him there, trying, in the meantime, interrogated him concerning his relationship with the FBI, which was non-existent, and they tortured him for 3 days. Never did really kill him, but he naturally expired through the excruciating pain.
What is this organization that kills to guard its secrets? There are 25 crime families across America, each structured like an army. The head of each family is called the boss. His deputy is the underboss. Equal with the underboss is the consigliere, the boss's top advisor.
I just take my chances, try to stay away from them, go someplace where they can't find me, just live as long as I can. You know, when they find you, bye-bye, baby.
Jerry DeNono, another killer turned informer. He's now serving time for murder in the same prison as men who want to kill him for betraying the Mafia. He rejects his old mob connections.
I don't like what they've done because they haven't realized reality yet. They're still in a fantasy. So I stay away from them, but there's only so much of a piece of a room I can hide. That's why it's not that easy to do time.
Joey Cantalupo. For 14 years, he worked closely with the bosses of 4 crime families. He became an informer for the FBI, and his evidence sent many top mobsters to jail. He now lives in hiding.
You must realize that a man like me, who has made cases against organized crime figures, could not possibly stay on the streets of New York. It was just a matter of time before I would be killed by these people.
Killing is the Mafia's way with informers. Bill Romer remembers how the mob took revenge on a debt collector they thought had betrayed them.
But the truth, go ahead to that.
Valachi also revealed its secret Italian name.
Are you a member of any secret organization?
Yes, I am.
What is the name of it?
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Cosa Nostra in Italian.
Our thing and our family in English.
Valachi called it Cosa Nostra rather than Mafia. Helped by huge charts, he named hundreds of men in the crime families or crime armies that made up the organization. He knew the punishment for betraying their secrets.
Yes. Senator, can I say something, Senator?
Yes.
As to what I'm telling you now, I need to go no further to say nothing else. This is what I'm telling you, what I'm exposing to you and the press and everybody. This is my doom.
Falacci died of cancer in prison, but he had armed guards to the end. Every informer faces a death sentence from the Mafia. Jimmy Fratiano is the most important Mafia member ever to defect. He now has to be protected from the hitmen of the mob.
Some 2 or 3 told us they couldn't speak English at all, and they just didn't fit in with the local terrain or the local people. They were standouts.
The men meeting here at Appalachian in 1957 were in fact the leaders of the Mafia in America. They were rounded up and interrogated, a humiliation for the warlords of organized crime.
14-carat hoodlums, strictly lived by breaking the law, preying on honest people, taking over businesses, killing each other, killing other people that got in their way.
Croswell's discovery shocked even the experts in organized crime. At the time, most police forces in America claimed the Mafia did not exist.
Appalachian was a bombshell. That's, I think, or at least 25 years later, it's fair to describe it as such. And this meeting of over probably the full extent was about 80 some odd people, meeting all